Greetings, everyone, and welcome to our Volleyball Introspective. It's a little look at the Enshrined class of 2006 at the International Volleyball Hall of Fame, and I'm sitting with Bernie Holtzman. And I think the conversation here we're going to enjoy because it will take more of an in-depth look at volleyball from the outside, the two-on-two phase that we now today call beach volleyball. And Bernard, I'm interested in hearing your story because I realize that if we go back to the days when you started playing, we're back there in the mid-40s, and we are literally on the beaches of California, hanging out at the Santa Monica Pier, Muscle Beach right down the way, and to think that you are probably one of the founders from where the term came, King of the Beach, for the success that you had back in your day.
Yeah, very true. This was probably 1936 or 38 we played, and my partner, I'm 5'10½", my partner was 5'6", and the game was played running all the time, you know, and no blocking. You couldn't block over the net then.
Sure.
And the court was long and wide. And all the players learned to run. And we tried to sell the sport, you know, not just when we had a tournament, we tried to get people to come. So the best way to do it is to draw them with something that's exciting. So Hollywood is very famous for its beautiful women. So we got a volleyball queen every year to make the awards, and in some cases she'd kiss the winners.
Which is always nice, kiss the girls.
I remember that very well.
Let me just talk a little bit, if we consider the time that you spent in volleyball, mostly outdoors, what was it that got you started, and how old were you?
Well, I was about, I'd say 13 when I went to Santa Monica Beach, and they had all the festivities on Sunday. It was beautiful. They had all the beautiful women. They had the guys lifting weights and all kinds of activity. And then they'd have a 6-player volleyball match going.
Sure.
They'd have 3 teams. They'd choose up sides. And the winning team would win a case of delicious apples.
Okay.
So I watched them for a while, and I said, can I get in the team? You know, 6 players. I was about 13. He says, no, you're too little. I said, yeah, but... He says, don't give me the yeah, but you're too little. So they wouldn't let me play, so I kept coming down, and finally one of the fellas felt sorry for me. He says, okay, you can play. And I said, fine. He says, but there's one thing you have to remember. I says, what is it? You don't hit the ball over the net. You're a setter, and you're too little. So I learned to set the ball, and that was very good foundation for a volleyball career because a lot of people never really learn how to handle the ball.
Well, it's interesting that when you look at the game today, and I want you to share a little bit about what you've done to instruct others in the game, because I guess the fundamentals have changed. You talked about how at one point early on there was no blocking at the net.
Well,
and I guess we've also talked about the fact that the bump was something that was
allowed,
not part of the original
in those
origin.
days you didn't allow anybody to block over the net.
Sure.
They changed the rule to make it more available for the tall players. They're trying to, you know, they've eliminated all the short players. The game is totally different. They block and they have one man in the back. There's only 2 players, and they got a small court, narrower, and they have 2 players, and one blocks and leaves the rest of the court open. And the guy that's in the back court is not a runner like we had in our day because we'd run for everything. Mm-hmm. So the ball, if he blocked it, fine, but if he didn't block it, the ball went down every time. There was no defense at all.
Is there something for the years that you spent out there on the beach that you could actually say was one of the more memorable competitions that you played?
Well, I assume the first tournament I won, you know, with
Sure.
Manny, and we played against some big names.
Was this all on the West Coast, or did you get to travel the country a little bit?
No,
playing?
West Coast.
All West Coast.
To be Santa Monica Beach. No, State Beach is where we had our first tournament.
So I guess with this we can all assume or even believe that the origins of outdoor volleyball and even 2-on-2 in the sand started with some of the gentlemen that played around your time. We're talking again the mid to late 50s and the early 60s before it just kind of in the 80s and 90s was kind of taken by storm.
You had some movie stars that played. Peter Lawford, Joe McRae, they came to the beach. And Lana Turner was down there once in a while.
Well, it's funny, everyone talks about going to Hollywood to get discovered. Did you ever find that some of the guys who played volleyball were actually attracted by some Hollywood scouts and maybe went on to stardom after starting
Well, I
on
don't
the
know whether
beach?
they were attracted, but I didn't know that Peter Lawford was a big star at that time.
Sure.
And so I never met Joe McRae before. He was a friend of my partner, Manny Signs. So I'm walking with this girl, and going toward the restaurant, and this big limousine drives up, and he says, "Hi, Bernie," and I almost fainted. The girl says, "Do you know him?" I'd never seen him before, but he's a big actor. But my partner had told him about me, so he said, "Hi, Bernie," and the girl was shocked that anybody would talk to me of that stature.
A little name dropping, so that's good. You knew some popular people. Volleyball, you said it was 13. You're hanging out at the beach, and after a few efforts, you got a chance to play.
Well, I didn't play doubles yet.
Right.
I got to play at Santa Monica. Finally, they let me play, and then an older fella spotted me. This was sixth player, and then he says, "Why don't we play doubles?" His name was Carl Stewart, and he discovered me, so to speak. He says, "Why don't we play?"
What did you first think when he made you that offer?
I said, "Fine." I was anxious to get in there. I watched it for years. So we played, and they had one court. You played a 15, and if you lost, you couldn't get back out again for another 3 or 4 hours.
Sure.
They'd have a list, and we lost every game. We never won a game. But we're determined.
When did that, exactly, determination. So when did that change, be it after a week or a month of just
Well,
pretty
we
much getting
kept
drugged?
playing. We kept playing until we got better, and then we became one of the better players at Santa Monica. So the rumor was that all the top players were at State Beach, Will Rogers State Beach. So the two of us went down there, and my partner he thought I was very good. So he kept telling everybody how good I was. So we got on the court, and we played the lifeguard, Sam Shargo, and a fella, one of the worst players down there, Manetti, and they annihilated us. And I said, "Boy, you better tell him you made a mistake." And the big difference was that at Santa Monica, you had the pier, which cut off the wind. You knew where the ball was going. We played at State Beach.
Yes.
You go for the ball, it'd blow 10 feet away from you. And that was the excuse we used for losing.
That you weren't used to the elements.
Yeah. So this went on for a while, and then after a while, I started playing with this short player, Manny Signs, 5'6".
Also from California.
California. These are all from California. And before the war, he played with two different players, me and this other guy. Nobody could beat Manny and I. Nobody could beat him and this other player, and that's the way it went.
Now, were you still...
No, that's nobody in the world could have beat.
Right, but were you still in your teens when you finally found the
Oh,
finesse
yeah.
and the success in the
Well,
game?
I was 19, and I went in the Army at 20,
Okay.
and they came and they said, "Okay, you're in the Army." I said, "What?" "You're drafted." So, of course, I had a volleyball career in the Army, too.
Oh, you did?
We were shipped to Africa to start with, and they were wearing these white cloaks, and they looked like ghosts, the Arabs, and it scared you to death. So we walked down the street, one would face one way, and the other guy'd walk and face the other way, make sure they didn't attack us.
Now, let's just talk about volleyball during the war. I mean, what do you do? The Army just owned a net? You made a net?
Then we went to Matur in Africa, and our commander, he wanted to keep us active. We were in the medics. We supplied medical supplies, and he says, "I want you to have some diversions." So he says, "We're going to have a volleyball tryout. Get the team ready." So we came out to the thing, and I started talking and making a few suggestions. And the guy said, he says, "What makes you think," he's from New York, "what makes you think you know more about volleyball than I do?" I said, "Well, I played it." He said, "That doesn't matter." So I said, "Okay, let's have a game, and we'll decide who's better at the game." So I said, "Pick your 5 or 6 players. Pick your 5 players. Get your team together." So he picked 5 players. He says, "Where's your team?" I saw a guy from New York, a little guy, a little bit like my teammate. I says, you're on my team. He says, you're going to play with 2 of you against 6 of us? I says, yeah, why not? He says, well, what do you want to bet on it? I said, I only got $1.50, which was a lot of money in those. He says, okay, bet it, don't be chicken. I said, okay, I'll bet it. So we played, and I put this guy, Stella, I put him under the net because I played a lot of mixed doubles. The girls stood in an 8-foot net.
Sure.
And he was a good setter. So we won the first game about 15-11. He says, you were lucky. So I said, he said, you want to bet something? I said, okay, bet $3. So we played another game. We beat him about 15-11. He says, I'm not convinced. So to make a long story short, we beat him 4 straight games. The last game was 15-2. He says, okay, you're in charge of the team.
That's it. He was convinced.
See, I had played doubles for so many years that this is the way you play, and that's the way you played mixed doubles. The girl would stand under the net.
Okay, so the nice thing about this story is that you were able to take your success. You proved yourself as far as to knowing that you understood the game of volleyball. And since then, not just with some of your Army mates, but I'd even say since the war, you've gone on to
the
to
best
educate
part
some
of
others?
volleyball is that they all loved the game. They loved volleyball. They were very competitive. We went all through Africa, Italy, France, and Germany. And we had a volleyball court in our second truck, 2 posts and a net. The minute the medical supplies would go down, the court would go up, and the guys would be playing.
Are there some things that you've done since your competitive years where you still try to encourage others to take on the sport of volleyball?
Oh, yeah. Well, now I belong to a senior exercise class. And here's people trying to stay alive. You know, you have to exercise. So we have a rubber volleyball, and we work it, see how many times we can hit it. We get everybody in there. And sometimes they don't listen to me. But they enjoy it. They even say hello to you. You know, it's keeping people alive and happy. It's in Glendale, and it's a wonderful experience because volleyball is going over real big with these people.
So California is still your home today?
Yeah.
Do you get a chance to go out to the beach? Have you been to the Santa
I
Monica
haven't been
Pier
to the
lately?
beach for years. I've got to go down there and see if there's anybody alive.
Oh, I'm sure that you would get there today and to be able to look. I'm just saying, you know, I'm telling you, to look at where you were as a pioneer in the origins of volleyball, to be able to go back to the Santa Monica Pier today and stand up on that pier, and I'm sure, just from things I've seen in television, as long as you can look, as far as you can look, up and down the beach, there are just nets strung up everywhere.
Well, see, you can play volleyball at any level. You don't have to be the best. You know, some of the best players that I knew, I played indoors too in the national tournaments every year. And there was one guy from Chicago. He came to every tournament. He never won, and he organized the team and he enjoyed it. That's what volleyball is for.
With your induction into the Hall of Fame, I guess I've learned that there's a little bit of a poem that you shared at the ceremony.
Yeah.
I'd be curious to hear that. Would you consider sharing that with me now?
Your curiosity is accepted.
Thank you very much.
I wrote this. Well, I'll tell you what happened here. I went to the Nationals. I went to a meeting. They had a big volleyball meeting in, I can't remember, it was 11 years ago. And I joined it, and they were making awards and stuff. And then I came home, and I found out that it was the first 100 years of volleyball. So I went home, and I said, geez, I wish I'd known. I wrote a poem at that time, and that was 11 years ago. And here's the poem I wrote. Maturity is the title. Volleyball is here to stay, 100 short years up to today. With loads of delicate ball handlers and bumpers galore, setters and spikers by the score. Sagacious strategists employing their skills, health nuts taking their pills. Blockers swarming the net while spikers keep blaming the set. Defensive wizards guarding the court with unwitting pleasure in such a dangerous sport. Servers with varying approaches, standing or jumping or moving like roaches. Coaches and managers, brain trusts of all kinds, steering and guiding and hoping for new finds. Volleyball, the game once called God's gift to the bum along the beaches, is now accepted in all reaches. Those who laughed at a pity-pat sport are now taking their places on the court. The world has embraced the late bloomer, so to speak, The pass set spike is at its peak. Volleyball, a 100-year-old phenomenon, has finally come of age. Those who play it and love it will never turn the page.
That's very nice and very relatable. Just the note there when you talk about how a spiker would go up and maybe have an issue with the net and look to blame the setter. The setter would be like, why didn't you hit that? That was a beautiful set. And
Right.
the spiker would be like, no, you could have given me a better shot than that. Funny where the game has evolved. What would you like for people to best remember you, or when they think about Bernard Holtzman and they think volleyball, how do you want them to think of you?
Well, I was a player and I enjoyed it and I made a lot of friends, you know. And of course, one thing was a little rough on me. I got kissed by a lot of the bathing beauties, you know, the volleyball queens. And
That can be tough work.
yeah.
I understand.
I have another poem I got to read. This is great.
Please do.
This has to do with people getting along in the world. I belong to a poetry group, and the ladies wrote this poem, and I didn't like all of it, so I put in part of it, but this is the way it goes.
Something with you and the ladies, and now poetry. Go ahead.
A dream. I have a dream deep in my heart where no one can touch or tear it apart. It's a world of peace where violence and war would cease. A different color of skin or religious belief would not divide or scatter. Only the respect for each person is what would matter. A beautiful garden this world would be, with tranquility and equality. Every person would love his neighbor and reap in full for his labor. So what can be done to make this come true? Is it up to me? Yes, also up to you.
And I would have to agree. Very well done. Very well done.
Thank you.
So that's it. We've talked about the history of you and the game, as far as to how you would like to be seen by others for what the game did for you and what you hope it does for others. If you had to give anyone some advice getting involved in volleyball, what would that be?
Well, you got to learn the basics and get along with the teammates and enjoy it. And if you lose, you try to figure out why you lost and what you can do to correct it. See, if you don't lose any games, you're never going to learn anything. Luckily, I lost plenty.
Now, and that's interesting because have you found yourself in a situation where most people, as you've tried to educate them, were better educated because of their losses than their victories?
Well, not necessarily. You don't keep losing, though, you know, if you're learning.
You hope some people will learn from their
You
mistakes.
got to figure out how to win. But you don't get disappointed. Every time you lose a game, you figure you've learned something, you know.
You got involved in volleyball in your teens. If that bug hadn't bitten you so strongly, is there another sport that you might have ventured into, or did you dabble in some other sport outside of volleyball?
We didn't play competitively, you know. We played hockey on the streets, you know, with bicycles and stuff like that, and played tennis. But I never adapted to these other sports like volleyball. See, you have to get into it properly. And in teaching the game, the most important thing, which they don't do today, even the setters, this guy that I played with, this little guy, 5'6", he could take the ball and he'd hold it up there until you hit it. He wouldn't even let go of it. When I played with him on the beach, I never got one serve. He got every serve. And of course, I was not a bad setter because of my training at Santa Monica, you know, where they made me set. So we were tough to beat. Then the next player I played with was a fellow named Selznick, who was also a great volleyball player. And I got every serve. One was, Manny was 8 years older than I, and Selznick was 8 years younger than I. So there was 60 years difference.
So I'm just trying to think, as we look at where the game evolved, as the big men, as it became a big man's game, you found yourself relegated to doing the setting duties and so on. They wouldn't let you on the net. They wouldn't necessarily rely on your play
today,
shot.
You couldn't play in the game today unless you're 6'7". They've changed the game around completely. You have a little teeny court, you know, it's much smaller than what we did. The running is over, and they have the Giants blocking on every play with one person covering the back court.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a totally different game.
Well, I'm glad that the opportunity was there for you to master the game before by chance maybe you were, I won't say pushed aside, but just on a different level of competition as the big men became part of the game.
Well, I stopped playing years ago, well before the big men came.
Well, congratulations to you on your
Thank
induction.
you. And thank you.
It's been a pleasure speaking with you. Enjoyed hearing your stories.
Yeah, right. Tell everybody to play volleyball. It's healthy. You get along with people, and you don't let it bother you.
Hey, I have a 2-year-old son. Easiest thing I was able to teach him as he was growing up was to bump the ball. He couldn't do much else, but I could just say bump, and he could.
Forget
and
the
now,
bump. This is it. Watch this.
he's got it all.
You have your hands up like this.
There's your set.
Here's the way they play today. You always have your hands up in volleyball.
Got to be at the ready. I understand.
I told the girls, I said, it's just like a guy's going to slap your face, you know, or you're going to slap a guy's face. If you're way back here, he's going to get away. It's the same principle in the volleyball.
Hands front, be ready.
Be ready for every ball. You move like this. In the senior exercise class I belong to, they all walk around like this. They're learning. Here's the way you play. If you watch the game today, you'll see nobody has their hands up.
Everyone, a true introspective on volleyball. 2006 Enshrined Bernard Holtzman.
Yeah.
On behalf of the International Holyoke Volleyball Hall of Fame, everybody, thanks for watching.
I'm sorry, but I don't deserve it.